When I was 18 years old, my dad beat me up, broke my nose, and threw me out of the house. Hey everyone, this is Chaz Ellis, and this is the Pageantry of Life. And as someone who has built multiple businesses and spent nearly 3 decades in the pageant industry, I've learned that real growth comes from facing life head on. I'm going to share with you my own experiences, some of which could have their own true crime podcast. And I'm going to hopefully use them to help you turn challenges into opportunities for transformation and empowering you to step into your true power. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to speak to y'all today because what I really want us to talk about is forgiveness and forging that forgiveness to create a better space for who you are. From the time I was 12 or 13 years old, I was in a home that was filled with drugs, alcohol, and abuse. When I was 18 years old, I'm sure I had done something in my dad's eyes to believe that I was disrespectful, talk back, whatever. And he was disciplining me. And I, of course, was rebutting, saying things that I probably shouldn't say. What was a verbal altercation became a physical altercation. My dad broke my nose. I went down a flight of stairs into our basement, and he said, "You will get the hell out of my house." And at that moment, I said, okay. And I don't know if I had just been past that point of like, I'm tired of doing this shit. I am tired of playing this game. But at that point, he said, get the hell out of his house. And I said, well, we can get the hell out of your house. And as I left, he said, you'll need me before I need you. And I just remember 2 black eyes, because when you break your nose, you mess up your eyes. But I also had a broken spirit. I had a broken, my emotions were like, what do I do? I had money and I got a room at the Red Roof Inn. And I wrote a suicide note. And in the suicide note, I just said, there's nothing left. Because I kept letting the words, you'll need me before I need you, be my mantra, my motto. And the phone rang. And it was my aunt. And these were the words that she said, let me love you. And I remember breaking down. I had this suicide note. I had planned how I was going to do it. And I said, well, as I tell this story, I take that deep breath because when I think about it, it was a sigh of relief. My aunt and her husband gave me a fresh start. They said, hey, come to Columbia. You can live here. You can do this. And so I took a break, from speaking to my dad, but it did not mean that I was done with my dad. I loved him because he was my father. I didn't like him for what he was doing. And as it continued on, it progressively got worse and worse and worse. And I've said before, I didn't like him, but I did love him. He was a part of my identity and I was a part of his identity. I still felt that we were a part of each other in that way. And that's why I continuously went back. And I was 34 years old when, as I like to say, the shit hit the fan. And I remember me and my family were like, this is the day. We are going to either fix him, try to fix him, attempt to get him help, or we got to walk away and God will do the rest. I knew that at that point, I could not let it consume my life anymore. It was taking up place in my career. It was taking up place in my love life. It was taking up places in my friendship, and I could not allow that anymore. So along with everybody, we go to his house. It was my aunt, my uncle, my brother, and my mother and me. I walk in. The drug dealer had just left on a moped, and somebody said, that's who the guy is. I walk into my dad's house. I look down, and there's heroin. Later to find out that's $30,000 worth of heroin. And it just, my emotional, but my just physical reaction was to flip the table just because I wanted to make him suffer. If you're just, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. And it was quite traumatic. So I flipped the table. He ran. He tried to drive off. I hung onto the side of the door as he tried to to back up. And my dad almost ran me over that day. He then ran and hid for days. I come home with the plan in motion of how we were going to, ultimately capture him. And it was 2 days later. I was having a glass of wine. It had been a long day. I couldn't sleep. I'm sitting there just on the back porch and I hear the crunching of leaves. And so when I talk about that this could be a true crime podcast, this is the element of, honey, hold on to your cocktails, hold on to your britches, whatever you want to call it, because this is about to get good. I was like, somebody's outside. It's 1:30 in the morning. And I was so, anxiety driven and overwhelmed. I opened the door and there's a guy there with a gun who says, I want my $30,000. I had to believe that my dad had shared that his son had been the one to flip over the table of worth of $30,000 worth of heroin. And I also had to believe that he gave my address. I was petrified. I was scared, but that's when it's a feeling that I can't explain because it was survival. And I pushed this guy. He falls over the railing. I locked my door, but I knew he had a gun. He could shoot through the door. And at that moment, this person that I've created a life with, which we will talk about later on in this podcast, says to me, how do you keep going? When do you draw a line? When do you say enough is enough? And at that moment, I said, enough is enough. I'm going to forgive myself for saying, I'm done. And that's what I did. I think it's safe to say that the journey to forgiveness can have many turns, can have many twists, can have many stop signs, can have some caution lights along the way. But it's not going to happen in a day. And it's not going to happen in a month. I had to forgive to be pleasant when I was present. You hear the old adage, you forgive, but you don't forget. I think that's where I lived for a long time, was forgiving, but harboring where I was not forgetting. I held on to a lot of anger. I held on to a lot of just disdain for people, things. Like I even if I created it in my head, because I was harboring all this that I still had not dealt with my dad or dealt with myself. So I was harboring these feelings, and it was time to do something about it. And you often hear, and I think today it is so much more, it's spoken so much more freely of a therapist, a counselor. But 12 years ago, you would hear you're crazy if you're going to a doctor or a therapist. But I knew that I needed an objective opinion and an objective person that I could talk to really dig deep and see what is it that I'm doing that is potentially hurting me long term, and what we can do to resolve it. And I sat with a complete stranger and told him what most would say is my version of the story. One of the strangest things was when the therapist said, "Do you like yourself?" And I never really thought of it that way. Did I like myself? And I don't think I did. As a matter of fact, I know I did. Because he said, if you can't sit in a room and like yourself, then how are you going to like anybody else? And how are you going to give of yourself authentically, emotionally, mentally, physically? How are you going to give that to someone? How are you going to grow with someone if you can't do those things? But I think the issue is I constantly portrayed that I was looking at the glass half full when I actually was looking at the glass half empty. I felt like I had a lot of negativity surrounding my thought process because I still had that place in me that hurt a little bit. I was wanting that resolved. And finally, utilizing someone to lay down a landscape that I could follow, kind of a diagram that I could go by. And if I put that effort in working into myself, that it ultimately could lead to where we are today. Forgiveness is not something we just flip on and off. Forgiveness is hard work. It's not a straight path. It's going to have twists and turns, but it is tangible if you allow yourself to navigate the different facets of it. I think therapy gave me some guidelines to follow. Those guidelines were things that through those 12 years, I was able to navigate and forge a relationship as I encouraged my dad to do the things that he needed to do. It didn't happen overnight for him to find his well-being and his health and his sobriety, but it was possible with laying firm foundation of boundaries. It was solely doable. I think where much is given, much is received. And I think the hard work, the tenacity, the mindset that I had led to where I am today. A father who is 4.5 years sober. People might find it extremely strange, but me and my dad talk every single day. Our relationship has fostered into communicating, him understanding who I am, me understanding who he is. I remember standing and sharing with him as a young person. I had all this blame to A, B, C, D, these individuals. I had all this blame for them. And I remember sharing that with him. And the most profound thing came of that when he said, "You cannot blame them for my actions. I am a human. I am responsible for who," and his name's Charlie, who Charlie Ellis is. I'm responsible for him. You can't blame someone for my actions. And that is really profound, because to take ownership, I think it is fair to say when someone, you hear that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. When someone shows you who they are, someone that you knew was in there, when someone demonstrates where they are and where they want to be, and someone constantly is making effort, it gives you that solace inside to say, hey, this can work. This can work. We can have a relationship. Might it be on my terms with safe boundaries? And hopefully he has put those boundaries in place for his well-being as well. And I think that is what truly, truly equips us as humans to forge forgiveness and forge a life of happiness and a place of just solace, that you just are comfortable with who you are and what you are. And now I feel at such peace. I'm having this conversation to help people understand that sometimes you don't give up, and you don't give up on those people. You can forgive them in different ways, but ultimately you've got to do it with what makes you feel whole and what makes you feel at peace and what makes you feel like you are 100% authentic to yourself. It's rebuilding trust. You can forgive and know that you've forgiven, but if you want to forgive and recreate a new relationship, a healthier relationship, you have to create that with what boundaries you're going to put in place. Forgiving, I think, has two scenarios. When you don't forgive someone, you harbor a place that manifests negativity, anger. You can at times become toxic. You can at times become, you spread things that just are, there's just no joy. There's just nothing there, And so if you can find forgiveness in your heart for someone, doesn't mean that you have to put yourself in. If you know the situation is not changed, you move on where you can sit in peace. But the power of forgiveness, it's a necessity for you to be healthy and whole. The necessity in forgiveness is You remain a better person. You remain a good person. You remain a healthy person. You're not dealing with the anxiety, the adrenaline rush, all the things when you have this built up frustration towards somebody. So as I've talked through through the power of forgiveness, why you should forgive, why I forgave, you also have to think about, and I've shared with y'all my personal story and what I've endured. And one, it's not the only time that I've ever forgiven. So I have to think about the friends in life and the people in life that maybe are having hardships with a friend, and how do you navigate that? And you have to know what value is brought to your life by that individual. So you either decide they made a mistake. It's all good, boo. We'll see you at the next party. Or you have to say, you know what? I'm not going to harbor this feeling, but I'm not going to let that person in my circle. I'm not going to let that person be a part of manifesting something in me that is unhealthy for me. Because when emotions are high, intelligence are low. And when you're having conversation, you're typically going to say something again to hurt their feelings if they've apologized. You've got to be able to identify. And the best source one person's ever told me was, you got to go with your gut. If it don't feel right in your gut, it ain't right. So if you know that apology, I'm sorry, don't feel right, take it, know what it was worth, and move the hell on. But if you know for a fact that that person is genuine, is totally genuine, why not give them a second chance? All they can do is prove that you are right or wrong. They can either continue to prosper your life, or you just kindly move away. And as we progress in this story of the pageantry of life, we're going to talk about the toxic friends, the way to choose and identify good people in your life. And you got to think about yourself when it comes to forgiveness. Is it hurting you? If it's hurting you and it's not hurting anybody else, then you got to talk to yourself, because if nobody else is hurting and you're harboring that, you got to let that thing go. As if I was going to relate this back to pageantry, people are going to say things. People are going to talk. People don't have anything to talk about, so they might make up things. But you have to, again, go with that little inkling in you, that little gut feeling. People are going to talk. People are going to spread rumors. There's two ways to handle it. You forget as if, because I always say, if you're not talked about, you're not thought about. But if you're going to give it power by addressing that person and saying, hey, this is how it made me feel. Because if you walk around with anger or, heartache against this person and they don't know it, or you might be dissolving an untruth. Sometimes you have to face it head on. There's a way to handle every person and be authentic to yourself. Do it with grace, do it with poise, but say, hey, this is how this made me feel. Because you can only become a winner when you have everybody is going to cheer you on at the end of the night. If whoever wins, whoever doesn't win. But if you are harboring something because you think someone has retaliated against you or has tried to tank you in your competition and you're holding on to that, you've got to address it. You got to let it go, because that's keeping you from the ultimate goal, and that's the crown, the winning, the money, the scholarship, whatever it may be. The other part of it is the winner stands in her grace and her poise with the utmost confidence. And if you want to stand where she's standing and you're harboring something that it could be another girl said, that a parent of a girl said, or a director, if you're harboring that, you're not standing in your authentic grace. You're not standing in your full confident presence. And when you are letting something weigh you down. When you let that go, like they say, let go and let God. You let God work through you, or you let that crown work through you, or those judges see there's nothing weighing her down. She's ready for this. If you want to win in life, you've got to be unapologetically you, authentically yourself, stand in your presence, because that's the pageantry of life. I'm always going to leave you with a little why stop there. And so why stop there is, if you have forgiven, if you are going to forgive, why stop there? Because you might share what you're dealing with, or your forgiveness, or how you navigated that with someone else, where they too can be in the same position as you are, have a healthy heart, have a healthy soul, and are able to be authentically themselves, much like you are. This being my first episode with you all, I am super excited that you let me go down a path and be vulnerable with you. Because this was probably the hardest one, but one that I hold so very dear to me. There's a lot to go in the pageantry of life, and I'm excited that you've joined me today, and I hope that you will join me for the upcoming episodes as we continue to build with different dreamers and different leaders as we aspire to make the world a better place.